Hey my souls, today we are going to talk about something a little bit intense. We are going to talk about purpose, not necessarily life purpose, but the purpose that you will have this spring. And in order to come in alignment with that and to tune into that, I have prepared some journaling prompts for you that you can feel free to write about right now as I'm speaking or later on or whenever. I know a lot of people struggle with intuition when it comes to writing, and that is why I want you to do one thing. As you listen to me, I want you to write down the first thing that comes to your mind, because a lot of the time the first thing that comes to our mind has some sort of importance. Even if it's not the perfect answer, it will have a lot of meaning. And usually what happens is we think one thing and then we get rid of that because it's silly, because we don't want to see it, because it's embarrassing, because we think it's stupid or unnecessary or inappropriate. But now we want to give space to that first thing that comes to your mind, no matter what it is. And I know that that is hard because a lot of us have been so trained to forget that first thought. And then we get into a cycle of overthinking it and putting our minds into it rather than our intuition. So I want to foster that today, that you simply listen to the first thing that comes to your mind as I speak about these questions. Being the witch that I am, of course, I'm going to suggest that you use tarot for inspiration as well. If you feel like you're kind of not tuning in right, if you don't have answers to these questions, feel free to draw a card for them. So while I feel like a lot of us are kind of getting on track of what our life purpose is, what I want to focus on today is either your life purpose or the purpose that you will have this season, because I do believe that we all have different roles that we inhabit during different times of the year, during different phases of our lives. And tuning into these roles that we have assumed unknowingly or that we wish to exhibit to others is very important. So what I want to happen is that we find out what the roles are, or the one role is that you want to have this spring in your own life as well as in other people's lives. I'm going to talk about this as the purpose of this season, because I feel like we don't just have a life purpose, we have many small purposes, kind of like small to-dos, small things that lead us to a greater understanding of ourselves, and those are the things that we want to explore with these journaling prompts. They are a bit less tuned into the season and a bit more directed towards something that I myself have been exploring and have been grappling with, which is finding my life purpose and finding my purpose during this time of my life. So I wanted to share that authentically rather than make up something very crazy for Ostara that is about storms and green and big things blossoming and all the good things that Ostara has. Let me know how it goes. Let me know if these questions really turned you on, or if they were kind of like, that's a bit weird. Because for me, they really worked out very, very well. I journaled with them just yesterday, and I am so pumped about what I wrote down. For me personally, I used them for a general life purpose reading, but I didn't want to make it so heavy because, this Ostara doesn't have to be the time that you figure out your entire life purpose. That's not necessarily the phase you are in. But I think just kind of tuning into the energies, tuning into what's around you, and finding the purpose for the season at least can be very cool, very chill, very inspiring. So that's the direction that I wanted to take it in. So if you don't know the answer to these questions, don't fret. Just listen and see what comes through. Draw a card if you need to, or do any other divination method if you need to. The first question is, what do you feel is your truest purpose this spring? This can relate to your life's purpose, of course, but it doesn't have to. Maybe it is just about helping someone in your life with a project that they are working on, or maybe it is about tackling a fear that you have carried with you all throughout winter and you need to kind of release the heaviness that winter tends to give to us. Or maybe it really is about building your business, about building your dream, about going after your dream job, moving to that country or that city that you've always wanted to move to, and finally getting the rubber to the road. If you can't think of anything in this moment, that's no issue. You can also write down a to-do that came to your mind as I was speaking about this. That will often happen to me. I have a lot of to-dos circling around in my mind, and then sometimes when I hear certain words, I will just start thinking of a certain to-do. So maybe if you just thought of it in this space, then it might have some importance to your tasks in this spring environment. The second question is, how can you authentically express or fulfill this purpose? Think of how your core being, what you are at your core, relates to what you just wrote. What we don't want to happen necessarily is that you write down, oh, I have to help X with Z project, and then you kind of forget about yourself. So I think even if you help someone, you can somehow find merit in it for yourself. So try to see how your core connects to this purpose or this to-do that you've written down. So how do you feel about helping this person? How do you feel about starting that business or making that big move? Why are you doing it? And where can you already sense a little bit of discomfort that might be alerting you to being out of alignment with your real purpose or with your inner self? Where do you feel like you have some sort of inner battle? Where does it not quite feel right to do this thing this spring? The third question is, what will others gain from you following this purpose? Now, this is another kind of cautionary question, because obviously we don't want to focus too much on what others expect of us. But that is exactly what we want to explore here. Think about how the opinions of others might be affecting you and might influence your decision of what your purpose even is. So if you feel like you have to change whatever you wrote down for the first question, whatever you thought that purpose was, and you notice, wait, that's something someone else is expecting of me, or something that I just feel a sense of duty, but I don't feel turned on by it, I just feel like I have to do it, then maybe rethink that and rethink whether it has to do with outside relationships. Of course, sometimes we have to do things that we don't want to do. Taking care of taxes or finding a new house can be very, very difficult, but it really comes down with how satisfied you are with how much you are giving and taking out of this situation. Is there a clear balance, or are you kind of dissatisfied with how little you are doing or how much you are doing in order to make this purpose a reality? This is definitely something you can keep checking in with during the season. So we're going to go a bit deeper with question 4 and become a little more uncomfortable, because we are going to ask, what is one fear or multiple fears that is holding you back from fulfilling that purpose? Maybe you are fully driven, you are fully happy with what you want to do, and you're really pumped to get started. I know that's how I sometimes am, and then I feel like no fear can be in my way. However, sometimes, maybe after a day, maybe after 2 days, maybe after we have really gotten the ball rolling, it will happen that we kind of teeter away a little bit and suddenly become afraid of the reality of making that purpose that we have a reality. So I would advise you to maybe go back to the second question and read about what brought you discomfort about thinking or about talking about this purpose for spring. What made you feel not quite right about it? And then can you relate that back to a fear? This could be a fear of success. It could be a fear of rejection, that somebody will not take you for a new job. It could be a fear of not being enough, of being inadequate. It could be a fear of overwhelming yourself. Even though you really want to do something, you feel like you don't have the resources right now. And becoming realistic about, do you actually not have the resources, or are you just scared to use them? You know, kind of that whole direction of where is your fear really informing your decisions? Because I know that it can be really hard to identify when a fear or an obstacle is kind of illogical, because we are not logical beings at our core. We imagine things, we make things up, we are unduly afraid of a lot of things that we shouldn't be afraid of so much, or that we don't need to be afraid of. That's how I want to phrase it. And kind of not forcing yourself to go in that direction anyway, but really confronting what scares you about it. That is the goal of this question, because simply going over your fear, bulldozing down that fear is not going to work. You have to sort of engage with it and figure out where it comes from and whether it actually makes sense to relate it to the situation that you're in. For example, if you are looking for a new job, should your fear of rejection really play into it? Because if you are in a job interview and the person doesn't take you afterwards, does that really reflect on your being, on your ability to be loved and of your value and worth to other people? Usually the answer is no, but that's certainly not what it feels like. So kind of be mindful of how your fears connect to the things that you do in order to achieve your goal or to follow your purpose, and whether that connection makes sense or you gotta work it, you know. I think you get what I mean. The fifth question is all about idealism. This can of course be applied to your life purpose again, but I kind of applied it to this spring. What role do you want to inhabit this spring? How do you want others to perceive you? This is kind of the Leo among these questions. If we want to go back to zodiac signs, how do you want to outwardly present yourself, and how do you want others to perceive you? And I don't think this is superficial. This is definitely something that can empower you to take steps towards becoming your truest self. Because in all honesty, the way people perceive us is often what is within us. So reworking that, figuring that out, and then putting it outwardly into our shell, whether it is through clothing, makeup, or really just through the way you act, is very, very important. What do you want people to come to you for? You know, what do you want people to say about you? Like, oh, if I'm looking for a bomb tattoo artist, I'm gonna ask X. If I'm looking for some solid relationship advice, I'm gonna ask Y. If I want a really smart political conversation, I'm gonna ask A. Or if I'm looking for inspiration, I will ask B. If I'm looking for a back rub, I will ask C. And which person do you want to be? You know, what role do you kind of want to fall into? And I feel like some of these questions are kind of a danger of doing this for other people, because that's not quite what it is about. The way others perceive you isn't always authentic, but working on making it authentic, that is basically what I'm trying to do here. So maybe people come to you for emotional advice, but that's not actually what you want them to come to you for, because you have nothing left to give. You don't like listening to people's problems. You don't like to give emotional advice. So I think reconnecting with what you want to be for other people can be helpful in finding out what is at your own core. And this is not 0% about what others expect of you. It's about how you want them to act towards you and how you want them to view you, and how you can exhibit the qualities that will lead to them seeing you in this light. The sixth question is, what is the next step you can take to realizing this purpose or this goal that you set in the beginning? So you might want to go back to the first question, reread what you wrote, and kind of see whether it is still current, whether all of the other questions kind of opened up a little bit of a deeper dialogue and you figured out like, wait, that's not actually what I want, that's what other people want, you know, just kind of go back, reflect about it, and see which parts of it really resonate with you and which parts of you are at your core. Once again, tarot cards can be a very, very great help here, because sometimes if you draw a card, it will match up perfectly, your intuition will be switched on, and sometimes you draw a card and you're like, I can't relate to this. This is supposed to be my life purpose, and it can help you too. It can help you figure out what you don't want or what parts you may not be seeing about yourself or your purpose. So if you want more journaling prompts, even though these were very, very in-depth already, feel free to check out my Patreon, because in the beginning of April, I will be uploading journaling prompts and a collective reading. And there's also plenty of other rewards. I'll put a link in the description box. And I just hope that you have a very, very wonderful Ostara. Personally, I love storms. I really hope that it's going to be kind of stormy, rainy, windy, cloudy, because I love gray plus bright green. I think I've said this before, but you know, the bright green of everything blossoming out there, plus the very dark and heavy sky. It's kind of this contrast that really, really turns me on. And I hope that is going to happen this Ostara or soon afterwards. I wish you the best of springs, the best of days, the best of weekends, and I will see you very, very soon.